Well, essential oils are part of the plant's immune system. So let's say a plant has its leaf broken, those essential oils are going to help prevent viral and fungal infestation in the plant. So essential oils can also help our immune system. We know that all of the essential oils have antimicrobial properties. And antimicrobial really means antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. And some are stronger than others. Some of the strongest are tea tree and oregano and pine and lavender. But our nasal cavities are in very close proximity to our brain. So if we smell something, those essential oils are actually going in to the brain, and they're also going into our bloodstream. And you can find residues of those essential oils for several hours afterwards. So we really should be thinking about what we are applying to our skin as far as lotions and shampoos and conditioners and things like that, because we absorb about 60% of what we put on our bodies into our bloodstream. So I do love essential oils to create an atmosphere, but they can also open up different neural pathways. So for example, I might be having a difficult day and thinking, I'm so anxious, I'm so frustrated, I feel ill at ease, and then I open up a bottle of, say, lavender oil, and I might take 5 deep inhalations on each side of my nose, and it opens up a different neural pathway. So rather than going down the I'm freaking out neural pathway, now I'm going down lavender lane, which is really a lot more pleasant. But another way we can use essential oils is in the bath, which has a very calming effect. But no, they are much more than just a placebo or a pleasant atmosphere. But yes, they do that. And that's why we really want to think about, what are we scenting our rooms with? A lot of things that people think are freshening the air are actually exposing us to petrochemicals that can cause brain impairment and should not be used in the home or workplace. So flower essences, the first exploration of flower essences that I've heard of is the work of Dr. Bach. He was a bacteriologist who lived in England in the early part of the 1900s, and he left a successful practice to really be one with the flowers. And he traveled into northern England and spent time experimenting with flowers, putting them in water, putting them on his body, meditating with them, praying with them, and really just being open to the power of the flowers. And he came up with 38 different remedies. And they were all plants that grew in England, holly and cherry plum and star of Bethlehem, which is a flower, not a star. And he found that they affected the emotional body. Now, for some people, you might say that the effects are mild, but I've given flower essences to cats, and I found that it helped them, and it certainly wasn't placebo because they didn't know I was putting flower essences in their water. And probably one of the most powerful and one of those like don't leave home without it things is Rescue Remedy, which is a combination of 5 different flowers. So Rescue Remedy is the remedy for crises and fear of flying and fear of public speaking or whatever it is. But it contains 5 different flowers: a cherry plum for desperation, impatience for stress, clematis for loss of consciousness and that faraway feeling. There's rock rose for terror and panic. And I think there's one other that I'm not thinking of, Star of Bethlehem, the great comforter of sorrows. And if you've never tried Rescue Remedy, it really is amazing. It's like a small miracle in a bottle. And again, it may not make the problems go away, but I've used it during arguments. I've used it for fear. I've used it for, I've given it to strangers on an airplane who were like flying for the first time. I was a little angry at my kids because they both went and got tattooed when they were 12 and 16. They skipped school. It was like, what? You went and got tattooed and Mr. Wizard believed you were 18 and you're 12? And they said, but Mom, we took Rescue Remedy. So I was supposed to be so pleased that they knew Rescue Remedy would help them with the stress of skipping school, getting in trouble, and getting tattooed while underage, and Mom not being too happy about it. But I have to admit, their tattoos were kind of cute. Well, flower essences, I would say, work more on the emotional body. So, for example, holly is good for suspicion and jealousy, or clematis for far away feeling, not being grounded in your body. So, but clematis is not used as a tea. I think there's been some historical use of it for migraine headaches, but it's not a often used herb. So I would say that flower essences are kind of their own division of learning. They're certainly used by herbalists, but they're not interchangeably used as they would be as an herbal tea. So they really have a different purpose, and it's worth studying, but I would say that it's more for the emotional body, whereas the herbs could be used for the physical or emotional body. Well, using herbs as a tea is wonderful because not only is herbal tea very economical, but it gives us time to reflect on what's going on. So let's say, in the morning, rather than driving to work and getting some kind of, fast food coffee as you navigate traffic and all that, having a cup of herbal tea could really be an opportunity for affirmation and reflection. So you could be, holding your cup of herbal tea and smelling the pleasant aroma, and also be thinking to yourself and encouraging yourself, saying, I'm nourishing my nervous system, I'm supporting my immune system. And so the aroma is going into your nostrils and going into your brain. You're tasting the herbs, and that's going to have a physiological effect. And so our brain is really like a great, receptor of flavor and aroma. So yes, herbal tea is wonderful, and I probably drink a quart of herbal tea a day, and it's not the same herb every day, but it's certainly a part of a great health practice. The best way to take herbs, there's many ways to take them. So again, we can use them in our culinary arts. So when you spice a meal and you use herbs like ginger or cumin or oregano, maybe this is going to enable you to use less salt or less fat to flavor your food. Rosemary on popcorn, for example, or beans that are cooked with cumin or coriander might be more digestible. When you flavor a salad dressing with, garlic, maybe you can back off the salt. So tasting the herbs and using them in food is wonderful. Cinnamon might enable you to use less sugar, for example. But herbal tea is certainly, part of our intake of more fluids during the day, but not everyone has the ability to make herbal tea. If you're going to school or work and there's not, tea kettle or stove there, it might not really be a possibility. So herbal tinctures are made by steeping herbs, often fresh herbs, but sometimes dried herbs, in some type of food-grade alcohol, like vodka or brandy. And I learned from my grandmother, who influenced me to start studying herbs at a very young age, to collect your herbs around the time of the full moon, and then strain them out around the time of the next full moon. So I often let them steep for a month. And yes, they are often steeped in vodka or brandy, or sometimes even Everclear, which I don't like the taste of. If you use Everclear, you need to use 50% water. But I'm really not a big alcohol consumer myself. Therefore, there are alternative ways of steeping your herbs. But before I tell you what those are, I will say that herbs that are steeped in alcohol have a very, very long shelf life. I've used them like a decade later, and they're still very effective. So the alcohol works as a medium to extract both the water-soluble and the alcohol-soluble properties of the plant. It also is a very good preservative. But again, a pregnant woman, a nursing mother, a small child, a recovering alcoholic might want to totally avoid alcohol. So you could also use apple cider vinegar or vegetable glycerin. And those have a shorter shelf life, more like 2 years, but for most of us, that's plenty long enough. The glycerin tastes good. That seems to be a great medium for children. The herb tinctures are considered not as strong, but there's many ways of going about it that can avoid the alcohol. Some people say you could add the alcohol tincture to hot water and the alcohol will evaporate, but I do think that people could get pretty ripped from drinking Kahlua and coffee, so I don't know how accurate that is. So what about cannabis? Well, cannabis is an herb. As a matter of fact, cannabis sativa means with a long history of cultivation, and Carl Sagan believed it is the oldest cultivated plant on the face of the earth. So I've often said, I stand for all plants. Plants were made by the great creator of all, and I have great trust. It doesn't mean, that poison ivy is my favorite plant, but even that is used as a homeopathic remedy. Well, we're finding out so many amazing things about cannabis. One is that it could help heal so many problems of our environment. We could be fueling our automobiles and airplanes with oil made from the cannabis seed. We could be using hemp seed as a protein, which is not psychoactive at all. It's actually a great source of vegetarian protein, much easier to digest than soybeans. I did write a hemp cookbook, the Hemp Nut Health Cookbook, with my friend Richard Rose. We're also finding out that hemp fiber made from the stalks of the plant make a wonderful fabric. And I know as health activists, we're often questioning, cotton is one of the most highly pesticided plants on the face of the earth because it is not considered a food crop. And so cotton is highly contaminated, which is contributing to the demise of our planet and the clean water. Whereas hemp can be grown with really no pesticides, especially when it's grown outdoors. Hemp could also be used to make paper. And we are cutting down forests to make newspapers that get tossed in the recycle bin when we're done. But hemp paper doesn't yellow, it's very durable, and because it's much easier to dissolve something in hemp called lignins, because hemp has much less lignins than trees, we would use maybe 1/7 the amount of chemicals to be making hemp out of paper. I live in the great state of Colorado, where I'm pleased to say that we have totally legalized cannabis. And I live in Boulder, Colorado, and we've been voted the fittest city in America, the best read city in America, the foodiest city in America. We've seen domestic violence decrease since cannabis has been legal. Prescription drug use, including sleeping pills and pain medications, have also decreased. I see that cannabis is a threat to the pharmaceutical industry, to the oil industry, to the paper industry. And another wonderful use of cannabis is if we planted it everywhere, it would choke out problem weeds like poison ivy and Canadian thistle and spotted knapweed. And I would much prefer that than pesticides being used in my environment. So cannabis can choke out weeds that might be problematic for an area. But another benefit of cannabis is that it grows very tall, really as tall as a tree in one season, and it produces seeds high up on top of the plant. And those seeds are wonderful food for birds. So if hemp were free to be growing outdoors, it would be food for the birds who would build nests in that area and then help to consume insects like mosquitoes and things that we might not want. As far as a medicinal plant, juicing the fresh cannabis leaves, which is not psychoactive at all, is being found. Check out some YouTubes on it, but people are claiming to cure themselves of cancer. Cannabis oil is being found to help conditions like multiple sclerosis, seizures, even in children, attention deficit disorder. So because this plant was made illegal, I believe in the Harrison Drug Act, and then it got re-legalized during World War II for a short period of time so we can make soldiers' uniforms and sailing ship sails and all that. Our pioneer ancestors crossed this country in covered wagons that were covered with canvas. The word canvas also comes from cannabis. So I really don't know another plant that could do as many things. Do I think this is an excuse to be a pothead? No, I don't. I value my health, but I think that there's certainly a lot of medicinal uses, and as far as harm reduction, compared to alcohol, I think this is an amazing plant, but I think it should be used with respect in, a sacred way with, prayer and offering to the four directions or, whatever thing you want to do. But I stand for all plants, including the dandelion and cannabis. So homeopathic medicine is another branch of natural medicine. It's not always made from plants, but homeopathy was developed by a physician, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, I believe in the 1800s. He was a brilliant man, spoke many languages, and his motto was like cures like. And that sounds a little peculiar. What do you mean, like cures like? Well, I mentioned earlier homeopathic coffea cruda, or homeopathic coffee, could help you to sleep because it calms a racing mind. Homeopathic poison ivy might help you to overcome poison ivy more quickly. With homeopathy, it's a much more exact science. If you had an earache, you might just say, well, use echinacea as an herb. But with homeopathy, you might ask, well, dozens of questions, like, is it the right ear or the left ear? Does the child want to be held, or do they want to be left alone? Does the ear feel hot or cold? Is the child having a high-pitched scream, or is the child moaning? So you would ask all these questions to zero in on the most appropriate homeopathic remedy. And I've had experiences with homeopathy that within a few minutes they worked right away. It doesn't make a lot of logical sense because homeopathy is very, very diluted. And again, they don't only use herbs, they might use things like minerals, like sulfur or lead or a virus. Like if you had an epidemic of whooping cough, pertussis, going through the schools, you might take homeopathic pertussin to help protect you from catching something that was going around the schools. But I've seen it be amazingly effective, and I use homeopathy a lot in first aid conditions. Like one of those other don't leave home without it remedies is homeopathic arnica. Arnica is not something you would want to use as a tea. It's considered, slightly toxic, but as a homeopathic remedy, we know that arnica moves a blood protein called fibrin, which can help reduce swelling, inflammation, bruising, black and blueness, and it can help you to heal more quickly. You don't want to use arnica topically on broken skin, but to take either the little white pellets internally and then apply a arnica cream around the area, but just don't put it on broken skin. But yeah, I'm certainly a believer in homeopathy, and it doesn't make sense because it's so diluted, but interestingly enough, the more diluted it is, the stronger it is, and the more likely you will even need to meet with a homeopath or talk to an herbalist or naturopath to find the right remedy for you. So there's so many natural remedies we can use if we just take the time to learn about them. I've had people tell me that that's been very helpful for them. I'm not a practitioner of that, but I have clients who say that it's been helpful. But sometimes I see people, finding out like, oh, I had this technique done and now I can eat gluten. Well, you might have been better off not eating it. So, I see people like, oh, I did this and now I can drink all the milk that I want. It's like, well, you might be stressing your body out in another way, or even stressing the environment out. So I am going to say that's not my area of expertise yet. Well, mint is so easy to grow, and people are worried about mint that it's going to take over, but you can use mint in smoothies or green drinks, juicing it. It freshens your breath. It's antiviral, so it's a great herb for colds and flu. You could add mint to the bath in the summertime because it makes your bath cooler. You could make a tea of mint, chill it in the refrigerator, put it in a spray bottle, and mist yourself if you're having hot flashes or if you're just overheated from exertion. Another herb that's in the mint family, or the Lamiaceae family, is lemon balm. And lemon balm has a nice lemony taste. It's a wonderful herb for children with attention deficit. It's an antidepressant, and one of the most important things about lemon balm is it's food for the bees. So we really should all be thinking about how can we support our decreasing bee population, which is a very serious environmental concern. So when we grow lemon balm, we're actually providing something that causes the bees to, be happy and busy and safe and, collecting easy nectar to support them. So that's another good one. But to be honest, I love growing weeds, and I eat a lot of them. Dandelion greens, stinging nettle, chickweed, cleavers, lamb's quarter, which is wild spinach. And I am so much more interested in eating wild lamb's quarter than cultivated spinach. And I purposely grow lamb's quarter because it survives the hot summertime drought. And my lamb's quarter is still proliferating, whereas the spinach was gone in about June. So I think that eating the weeds actually helps to strengthen our immunity and helps us to be more adaptable to this polluted world, because the weeds have to struggle for their survival. And if we want to be able to adapt, as we campaign for a cleaner environment, I feel that eating the weeds is really one of our great allies. And we've been bamboozled to think that everything we eat needs to have a barcode and a label, needs to come in a plastic bag with directions, and it's not how it was 100 years ago, and it's not how it needs to be. We really need to learn that nature is providing us with so many wild edible plants, and really a disgrace to our nation is we are currently using a third of our nation's water supply to water grass, which is a crop that we don't eat. I know, maybe if you juice wheatgrass or something, but most people are growing that in trays. So we should really rethink that our lawns could really be an opportunity for salad greens and herbal tea and natural habitat for the bees. And a lot of those are our great allies. But other things that I have in my yard that are easy to grow: violets, edible leaves, a traditional anti-cancer remedy, beautiful purple flowers that are edible. Thyme is very antimicrobial. That's why it was used in Listerine, guaranteed to kill germs. But thyme is wonderful for lung infection and also coughs and allergies. And fairies are said to dance upon a bed of thyme. So if you believe in fairies and want to encourage their coming to dwell near you, then why not? Shakespeare said it. Well, I've been interested in natural medicine since I was very young. My grandmother was French Canadian, and when I would go visit her, she always had some kind of herbal potion. I grew up wearing a little medicine bag around my neck, and she would put garlic in the medicine bag. And when I would see my parents again, they would say, "Why do you listen to her? Those are old wives' tales." And I would adamantly say, "But they really work, and I would much rather do her remedies than get a shot or take antibiotics." So my grandmother's idea of ice cream was to put maple syrup, which we made, on snow. And for me, it was like something out of a fairy tale. So by the time I was 15, I went to an all-girls boarding school, Miss Hall's school, and I sort of was an alternative practitioner there, where the young ladies would come to my room when they had cramps or headaches or stomach aches or couldn't sleep, and I would basically, even though I was a kid, I was trying out herbs that had been used throughout history and found that they worked really well. And I've never worked in any other industry except with natural foods. I've had 2 natural food vegetarian restaurants in my life. I've worked in natural food stores and natural pharmacies. I have a private practice, and I've written 13 books. But this is a subject you can study your whole life. But I would say probably by the time I was 15 years old, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And even in boarding school, if this is helpful to any other young people, anytime I had a paper or a project to do in school, I would turn it into an opportunity to learn about herbs. So if I was studying French history, I would write a paper on herbal medicine during the French Revolution. If I was studying Spanish, I would write a paper on hierbas medicinales de Mexico. If I was studying chemistry, I would write about the phytochemicals in plants. So, anytime you have a paper, it's really your call on what you want to write about. So make it something that is going to be of value to your life would be my advice to young people. So in the morning, I drink lemon and water. I do yoga, not for very long because I'm really busy, but I try to do yoga for at least half an hour, 40 minutes. I usually have some kind of wild green drink or some kind of breakfast. We eat a lot of wild food in our house, so it might include like wild elderberries or mulberries. That's one of our favorite things to do is, go collect wild greens. I feel that they make us feel super strong. I do take some supplements, but I'd say that there's nothing I do that I feel is really unhealthy. So like, rather than thinking it's a sacrifice or I have to give something up, I feel like really blessed that, my friend David Wolf likes to say, nothing tastes as good as feeling good feels. So, everything is like full of things that improve your health. And I could make a list of all the healthy things to do during a day. Take an aromatherapy bath, facial acupressure, stand on my head, walk outdoors in fresh air, eat seaweeds, eat wild food. And I found that it would probably take a week to do all the things that I would want to do in a day. So I actually created a list that lists all the healthy things I could do in a day. And then across the list, I made the days of the week. So I really try to do maybe 7 to 10 really super healthy things a day, which might be, a hike or a dance, or eating some kind of superfood, or a meditation practice, listening to self-help tapes, cleaning something, because it's not only about our physical body. We want to put attention into our relationships, our partner, our children, our creativity. I do lots of artsy things with my hands. I have a goal of making 2 quilts for each of my grandchildren before I leave the planet, and reading lots more books. So I see all of that as health practices. I really wanted to make a stand for the dandelion, because dandelion has been a much maligned weed. And Emerson said, a weed is an herb whose virtue has not yet been recognized. And we need to stand for the dandelion because it's everywhere, and I feel that its message is saying, use me lots. You can eat the greens in the springtime. They're bitter after they flower, but we shouldn't be afraid of a little bit bitter. But if you want them to taste sweeter, collect them before they flower. You can eat the flowers. I have all kinds of recipes that I make with the dandelion flowers, everything from dandelions in smoothies to dandy mushrooms that I make in the food dehydrator to dandelion loaf. You can dig up the root and eat it as a food. The dandelion stems can be used like pasta. They're also one of the first foods for the bees. Dandelions, just the fact that they are so hardy and survive so much adversity. When the grass is dead, the dandelions are still standing strong. And I feel that that's really one of our answers to helping us adapt to the pollutions that exist on our planet. So as we campaign for a cleaner world, let's make friends with the dandelion. They are not the enemy. Pesticides are. What foods are prominent in my life? I would say wild foods. Stinging nettle, we make a lot of use of. I make stinging nettle pesto, and no, it does not sting your mouth. I use it in juice. I make soup out of it. I would say dandelion greens are another prominent food. I love blueberries, but there's another berry that I make use of, and that's serviceberry or juneberry. It's in the rose family, and they taste a lot like blueberries, but they grow on a bigger shrub, so one little shrub can give you so many berries. Think about planting a serviceberry little shrub. They are so good, and foods that are blue in color like that are really high in proanthocyanidins. They're good for brain function and your eyes, and capillary circulation to your extremities. I also eat chia seeds. I travel with chia seeds. You soak them in water, and they absorb 7 times their weight in water, and then you can flavor them up. Instead of oatmeal, chia seeds could be flavored like oatmeal with cinnamon, apples, raisins. They're high in omega-3s, so that's another important food in my diet. I do my best to eat gluten-free. I like to say I'm high raw, mostly vegan, sometimes flexible. I travel to a lot of places, but that's kind of my, tagline for what I do my best. And I do allow myself 1 mocha a week, usually on Sunday, where my partner and I synchronize our day planners so we know who's going to be where and doing what. And that's just sort of a little treat. But, we have it with oat milk or almond milk, or make our own hazelnut milk. It would really be great for everybody to grow something, even if it's sprouts or growing something on your balcony or your porch, or think about reclaiming your yard. I think a lot of us feel disempowered. Maybe we live in homeowner land where the association doesn't want you to grow anything, but we really need to start attending those meetings and creating social change, because using 1/3 of our nation's water to water grass is wasteful. And that might have been a cool thing like in the 1800s, but it's not sustainable anymore. So if we would think about creating more edible lawns, I have an article you can find online. It was on Huffington Post called "Get Off Your Grass and Create an Edible Lawn." I think that should be a little mantra that resonates in all of us. You know, if you're recycling, recycle more. I live right downtown Boulder, and I compost and recycle. So we really need to, you know, do more. You're recycling glass. Well, you know, what can you do to buy less, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle? You know, I also want to share that I'm 63 years old and I've never learned to drive a car. And yet I've managed to raise 2 children, have 3 grandchildren, write 13 books. People think that cars liberate them. And I have people say, I don't see how you can stand not driving because, you know, it takes an hour and a half to take the bus to the airport. But if I drive my car, it only takes an hour. And I say, yeah, but how many more hours a week or month do you need to work at your job to pay for gas, a new transmission, insurance, car repairs? So I just want to say it is possible to live on planet Earth without owning or even knowing how to drive a vehicle. And I know there's the thing about like, well, what would you do if there's an emergency? Well, like if it's really bad, you're supposed to call 911, but I also, you know how to do first aid, and I have delivered babies. But, you know, I also know my limitations. So, you know, I would really like to suggest that we need to be part of the solution and not depend on the government or big business to make the change. But what can we do? Learn how to use public transportation. You know, there's phone apps. You know, you can look on your computer like, when's the bus? I need to get to this town by this time. And yet I managed to travel all around the world using public transportation and carpooling. And I always, if I ask somebody for a ride to a party, I say, you can ask me any herbal questions you want. I'm happy to, you know, give you a little download. You know, I think Gandhi said this, be the change. Rather than waiting for the world to change, what can you do? And we can all do something, and we can all do more than we're already doing. So keep challenging yourself and growing. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to, you know, share a little bit of things that are important to me that I hope become more important to you. And I wish you all many thanks and many blessings.